Hey guys, Topaz, Shaun. Thank you very much for jumping back on. It's a privilege always to sit down with you both. I get a lot of questions asking about the current dating crisis, and both of you were my two most requested guests to get back on. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day, guys.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
No, thank you very much. So right now, guys, we have a loneliness epidemic. We have large cohorts of both men and women who want relationships but can't get into them. And I'm always a bit of a stat man. I read the stats and I know that, people have different opinions about statistics, but I've read countless forums and the stats obviously don't lie. I read an interesting one. It said 1 in 3 men between the ages of 18 to 30 hasn't had sex in the last year. And I'll start with you first, Topaz. What do you think are some of the societal factors that could be contributing to this?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not shocked by that at all because I obviously my platform, I hear men's stories all the time. People comment their stories. They tell me I made a video once a year ago specifically about the male loneliness epidemic, and that's where everybody was able to like really share their stories. Some men were saying that they haven't ever even felt the touch of another person. So that doesn't shock me because I've been already like hearing their perspectives. It's obviously sad to hear someone say that they've never even felt affection from another person. And there's tons of men that are virgins at the age of 30, which is quite shocking because you're not going to meet a woman that's a virgin at the age of 30, right? So obviously what I think is the major like cause of that is the whole shift in feminism and making this like war on masculinity and creating a war between men and women, and the hookup culture and all that. And I think all of that obviously it goes back to feminism because it's not all men that are experiencing that. It's men that, like there's a specific demographic of men that are getting the dates, they are getting, the women and all that, but there's tons of men like normal, like everyday men that are not. So it's like almost like a bulk of them are getting the experience of dating and it comes easy to them, but a lot of them it's not. And I definitely like my opinion is this due to feminism.
Yeah, Sean, I remember, posted a video on TikTok, mate. You were talking about the male loneliness epidemic. I think if I read correctly, back in the 90s, it was the number of close friends men would report having is around six, and now that is zero. But what's your thoughts on all this, mate?
Yeah, I think one of the big factors is the change in the working environment. So I think, like, let's say 50 years ago, most people worked in agriculture. So most men would be exposed to sort of close family members, uncles, cousins, grandparents, and we would have strong male connections directly in our day-to-day life. So I think people's working environments, even more so now, people working from home and working remotely, is making people a little bit more isolated. I know that's a big factor. If I was to put it down to anything, I would say that's one of the biggest contributing factors.
Yeah, 50% of men, I don't know if you guys know this, but 50% of men say that they are not looking for committed relationships. You you have the other half of men that do want relationships, but then you also have the other half that don't. And the majority of women that I also speak to do want relationships, but are struggling. And I wonder if it's some of the cultural shifts, especially towards regarding masculinity, commitment issues, things like that. Um, but what is your sort of take on the reason why 50% of men are just giving up?
you wanna take the lead on that one,
Yeah,
Toby?
you go first, Topaz.
Oh, okay, I thought you were asking him. Well, since, like I said, since I deal with men on a day-to-day basis with my platform, the main takeaway from it is that they feel like they're not wanted. Um, so they feel like it's almost like, what's the point? It's kind of like they've given up on dating. And when you're told constantly, and if you go on social media, honestly, it's pretty bad. Like women are constantly just berating men, putting them down. It's my For You page, like it's women complaining about men 24/7. And I don't really see that from men. Like men will not really go home after a date and be like, guess what, guys, this is what happened. And she didn't even offer to pay half the bill or whatever. You know, like guys don't really do that, but women are really just airing all their dirty laundry onto the internet and just making men look bad in general. So I think they're just fed up. And from what they tell me, it's like, why are they going to continue trying when they keep being told like, we don't want you, right? So it's a big struggle for a lot of these men in that sense. They're just constantly being put down and told that they're not wanted, and they're not good enough, all those things. So I think that's been a big shift for them to I think they're just finally like, okay, fine, we give up.
Yeah. And Shaun, mate, you work with hundreds of men. You know, you're regarded as an expert on relationships and dating, and you really help guys, you know, with their whole experience. I'm not too sure if you're familiar, mate, with Topaz's channel, but Topaz posts a lot of stuff regarding masculinity, the crisis in dating with regards to both men and women. She's very much a men's advocate. She understands the struggle. She understands both the dilemmas that both men and women are having too, mate. But working with some of the clients that you have, what have you found some of the problems that you've encountered with your clients?
Well, firstly, I think it's awesome that there's, you know, people like you, Topaz, that are like advocating men, and I think it's needed. You know, I think from both sides, I think men need to try and understand and have a bit of empathy for women's problems and vice versa. And I think that's one of the biggest solutions for the dating crisis. So yeah, I just want to like acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and just like to kind of roll off what you were saying as well. I think a lot of men just don't really know what their place is now. You know, I think
Mhm.
uh, two of the main pillars of masculinity traditionally is like being a protector and being a provider. It's like most women don't need protecting. We're, you know, as a society, we're safer than ever. And in terms of
Mhm.
providing, it's like a lot of women are more independent than ever. So that coupled with exactly what you were talking about, this like shift of men aren't needed, men aren't wanted. I think it's just making a lot of men frustrated and fed up, and they think, well, okay, well, I'll just stay single. If I'm not needed, then why would I even bother to try and
Mhm.
pursue women? Why would I put myself out there to potentially get her again? Um,
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of the guys that I talk to just are like coming off the back end of the breakup, or they haven't even bothered to get back out there. They just don't even know where to turn. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, like loneliness and just feeling completely stuck and frustrated. I think is like a common one, as well as a
Yeah.
few others.
Mhm.
The biggest worry that I have with this, guys, I don't know if you're familiar, we've had a 30% spike in crime across the country here in Australia. We have a lot of youth crime. We have people, you know, vandalism and from theft to breaking and entering. It's a lot of youth crime as well. And if you look at the stats, if you look at what happens in broken homes and single
Yeah.
parent homes, you know, in Topaz, you've touched on this on your podcast, haven't? Not your podcast, your channel. You've
Mhm.
spoken a little bit about what the ramifications are with single parent homes. And what have you found out about that?
Are you speaking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought you were shifting it over to Sean. Yeah, so there actually are studies too that prove that most of the people that are in jail do come from a single parent household. So I think with your point that you touched on with the crimes and stuff, I find that the more we let go of the nuclear family, the more it is destructive to society in general. And that's the thing is, it's like that's what worked. The nuclear family worked because when kids have the dynamic of a father and a mother, they get both aspects, right? They get the discipline from the father, they get the nurturing lovingness from the mother. It's like people fail to understand we do need those two different aspects, the feminine and the masculine, to raise a child. And when kids are missing that, whether or not it's they're missing a father, if it's a woman or a man that's missing a father, they they rebel in different ways because they're missing something that they might not even know it affects them, but it does affect them. Um, and yeah, and like I said, there was studies that were proven that I don't know where that noise is coming from.
The timing's brilliant as we're talking about
Yeah,
crime.
as we're talking about, is that on your end? In Australia?
With
No.
what? Sorry.
Oh,
Siren.
there was a siren.
Yeah, yeah. It
Is it on your
was.
end?
Yeah, my end.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
speaking of, yeah, so most of the people that are in jail, I can't remember the exact percentage right now, but I think it was something as high as like 70-80% of people in jail are from a single mother home, single parent
Holy
home. Yeah. It's
shit!
very high. Yeah.
Shit. Did you know about that, Sean?
Yeah, I know both statistically and firsthand how much single parent homes can affect people. I grew up with just my mum and two brothers, so um, I've had run-ins with the law, definitely had my fair share of mental health problems. I wonder how much having a present father growing up would have influenced that. I think it almost definitely would have had a positive effect. Um, but yeah, it's like higher chance of suicide, higher chance of mental health disorders, higher chance of crime, and lower academic results as well. So it's like across the board, it's
Yeah.
absolutely huge. So
Yeah.
I feel like we're
The
setting up kids with a disadvantage from the start, because like the one thing too is as a woman, I do as best I can try to understand the male perspective, but I'm not a man, right? So if I'm raising a man, like if I have a boy, let's say hypothetically I had a son, by myself, it wouldn't be as easy to understand his experience because I'm not a man myself. So like having a father, he's able to connect in a sense, and I think that's why it's really important because at the end of the day, we're different.
yeah. The case of Elliot Rogers is an interesting one, and I believe also there was an individual in your country too, Topaz, in Canada. I can't remember the individual's name, but there has been reported incel killings. Sean, do you know what the word incel means?
yeah, what does it stand for again?
Yeah,
Involuntary.
Topaz, you know what incel means. I can't think of it at the top of my head. What incel means? It's
Um,
involuntary celibate. Is that right?
That's the
that's
one.
yeah. I think it's
Yeah,
something along those lines.
yeah. So Elliot Rogers, I don't know if you're familiar with, was an individual that went on a mass shooting spree a few years ago. He regarded himself as a virgin that wanted relationship, but then obviously he committed these misogynistic terror attacks. And I believe this also happened in your country too, Topaz, of an individual that rammed a lot of pedestrians. And so there have been a lot of reports about incel killings. And I think also we're starting to see a spike in violence because of the fact there's no father present in the home. We're seeing more and more broken families. We're seeing also, I think, where men are in a position where they feel like they're not needed in the world, if that makes sense. We have numerous men that want committed relationships, they want a family, but are really struggling. And I was listening to Chris Williamson the other day. He talks about the male sedation hypothesis. And I think the reason why we're not seeing an astronomical amount of violence, we're seeing a little bit, is because he believes that men are sedated. So um, this is according to stats, men between the ages of 18 to 30 report spending 2,000 hours playing video games and stoned. So that's not a very good prospect for dating for a woman. You know, someone
Yeah.
that's sitting alone at home on their butt playing video games. But I think we're in a situation right now where guys need to obviously find their place in the world. Sean, I'll start with you, mate. With your program and what you offer guys, what are some of the things that you work on with them? You write them a nutritional plan and a program as well. So first thing is getting to the gym, mate. But what can guys do to help their dating prospects?
Yeah, I think making something of yourself. Interesting fact as well from the study was the most unattractive hobby as voted by women was playing video games as
I
well.
saw
So
that.
You'd agree with that, wouldn't you, Tope?
No, I saw it. It was a recent study. I saw it.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've got nothing against it. I think a little bit here and there is great, but if it's your main passion, unless it's making you money, you need to get out there and start sort of providing some value to the world and society. Yeah, you obviously mentioned, I think for a lot of people, and men in particular, a great starting point is looking after your physical health, look after your
Mhm.
sleep, look after your diet, get out there, start working out. I think if you can do that and you can start sort of integrating some healthy habits, that's just a good building block, you know. Um, so yeah, I think that would solve a lot of problems. Just like look after the basics, and it really is basic just to be looking after your health. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think even you mentioned the gym doesn't necessarily have to be the gym. It could just be any sort of active hobby that's going to contribute positively to your health. Whatever you enjoy, get yourself out there, and if you can, make it a social thing. And opportunities can come from that. I think a lot of relationships are formed off good friendships, and if you're doing things that you enjoy, you're naturally going to be exposed to people who have similar values. So it's just one positive habit will have a knock-on effect in so many other areas of your life. So yeah, as I said, I think just looking after your basic physical health is a brilliant starting point.
Yes. Yes. And Topaz, when we last spoke, we were talking about the Morgan Stanley study. It's projected that 45% of women between the age of 25 and 44 will be single and childless by the year 2030. Um, right now, 50% of women at the age of 30 are childless. 20, 30 years ago, that would have just been unheard of. You've done some videos on some, on the
Yeah.
ramifications that happen if women don't plan ahead. I think
Yeah.
this is the really difficult thing right now is because women still want to have a family. They want to prioritize their career, but
Okay.
it's the hard part of juggling that. They have to figure out how they're going to plan ahead.
Yeah.
But, given that women are childless at the age of 30, how does this trend interact with societal norms, whether it be planning, career, aspirations, and even independence?
Yeah. So this is there's so much I could go speak on this topic with so many different things because the thing is it's like almost like a domino effect too, right? The fact that women are waiting until 30 to try to find a partner, it's like it's putting also pressure on men and it's just creating like it's a disaster for everyone. Um, and the thing is like what I advise women is I say I understand the whole fact that society is not what it used to be. We're not gonna ever go back to what it used to be. That's fine. But we don't have to make dumb decisions either. And the thing is, it's like you can still have a career. And in this day and age, it's not possible. It's usually not possible to raise a kid with a one parent household income, right? Like it's not really doable. So at the end of the day, yes, you still have to have your career. That's fine. But it doesn't stop you from looking for your partner in your 20s. right? Like the thing is that I don't understand and I will never understand with women is that they waste their 20s with the whole hookup culture. And all that does for them is give them trauma. It gives them baggage. It adds all this negativity to them. So it just women were tricked in that sense, and that's something that like I always try to tell them like do not fall for the hookup culture thing because it's just going to work against you. So what I think is women should in their 20s date with intention. I'm not telling them to get married in their 20s, but there's nothing wrong with dating with intention, and that would give them the possibility of finding their husband that they could get married to in their 30s and have kids in their 30s instead of meeting someone in their 30s and then deciding, oh, okay, I've known this person for 6 months. Am I ready to have kids? Like, that's not long enough to know someone to have kids. Like, having children is the biggest decision you're ever going to make in your life. And I feel like people nowadays are taking it way too lightly, and having kids outside of marriage, having kids with people they barely know. So I feel like in general in society, it is creating a negative impact because it's leaving. That's what's also creating all these single moms too, right? Because they're having
Yeah.
kids outside of marriage, and they can say like their argument with me about this is, well, we like even people in marriages leave their marriages and are single, but it would reduce it significantly, and that's what I'm trying to explain to them. If you wait until marriage and have a child, I guarantee that society would be in a much better state and have less single moms. So
Yeah.
it's like a domino effect with everything. We're just we need to be smarter about these decisions. And women need to really think about their husband in their 20s. And I'm not saying rush it, but I'm saying that it's easier to pick someone and get to know someone in your 20s rather than waiting till you're 30 and then like trying to rush that guy, you know?
Yeah. What's really interesting about this conversation we're having as well, like Shaun, mate, you're getting a bit of an insight from Topaz. So you're getting it from a woman's perspective as well, mate, because you work a lot with men. But this is fantastic to bring Shaun in because Shaun, I know you obviously have a lot of content catered for men, but it's great to hear obviously from your side and what's happening as well. But guys, I don't know if you know, but there are currently 2 women for every man obtaining a 4-year college degree in the US. So, given the fact that, there are 2 women for every one man completing a US college degree, I think there's a bit of disparity in the shape of dating and dynamics because I don't know if you know this stat, Shaun. There was a stat, I wrote this down actually. I'll see if I can find it. It might have actually been in the UK. It said women on average earn 1,111 more pounds than men, with 78% valuing financial stability in a partner. So if you have a world where women are attending university at a higher rate and more success in employment than men, at least the age gap between 21 to 29 range is when most people perhaps looking for potential partners. And yet socioeconomic status is a very important detriment for women. And Shaun, mate, we've spoken about hypergamy, and this gets thrown around the internet, but I think there is some truth to that because women generally do want to date a man who's as educated or more educated, or as employed or more employed than they are. But what do you think we can do to improve? So if hypergamy is a real thing, mate, what do men need to do to be able to be more appealing to the opposite gender?
Yeah, I mean, some of those studies are like kind of not shocking, but super interesting because it's a huge shift in, you know, the way things have always been. And like from talking to a lot of women, I know women value education and like economic status. They're 2 big things of how they value, what sort of partner they want to bring in. Um, so for men, again, you just got to make something of yourself. You really do. You know, get off the video game, start working harder. Just try and bring more value to the world and to yourself inherently. I think that's just a win-win for everyone on a personal level and a societal level. But also, what I'm hearing more and more now from women, which is kind of new, it's like they want men with emotional intelligence. And I think, you know, what that means be up for debate. But I think just men who have like kind of done a little bit of work on themselves, maybe gone to therapy, they have an understanding of how their sort of traumas and insecurities and fears may be projected onto other people. And that like that's a huge green flag for a lot of women. And I think that as a man, if you can sort of look into those things, that's going to set you apart from a lot of the other men out there. And for women, I think you want to get really clear on maybe even just start with the three biggest values that you would want your partner to have. And you can't have it all. You know, if you want a high achieving man who's super dedicated to work, earning a lot of money, super focused, he might not be the most emotionally available man. You know, so I think you have to get very clear on the three things that you want. And sometimes those things kind of contradict each other.
Yeah.
Example I just used. So I think being a bit more realistic with expectations for women and also for men, just get their ass in gear as well.
Yes. Yeah. And Topaz, why do women place more importance on a partner's socioeconomic status? So from the woman's perspective, I'd just like to know what the reason is. So I believe that it's based on biology, where women are sort of hardwired into survival traits.
Yeah.
But a big predicator on a long-lasting relationship is important, obviously, to have financial stability. Because we look at what's happening in the world right now, things are fucking expensive. But
Yeah.
just from your perspective, Topaz, what is the current reason? Because you speak to women as well, but what is the reason behind why women have such an importance towards a man's socioeconomic status?
I think, yeah, like you said, it all comes down to us being who we are at our core. And at the end of the day, a woman is going to be a woman, a man is going to be a man, right? And so, like, as a woman, you still want to feel, even though like obviously everything has changed, society has changed, you still want to feel a sense of protection and a sense of this guy will be able to provide for me. But the thing is, women are not as realistic as they should be because they're not, for example, blue collar men. They're not paying attention to the blue collar men. These are masculine provider type of men, and they're just not paying attention to them, right? So it's just, I feel like there's a lot of unrealistic expectations from women and they're kind of not really sure, I think, on what they want. And I think that the internet is playing a big factor in that because they're listening too much, they're too chronically online in that sense. Like they're kind of like following the trends, oh, well, right now, I don't know if you saw it, but right now women are being told to leave their husbands and boyfriends if they voted for Trump.
I
So,
heard about that.
and
Isn't
they
that
are.
fucking ridiculous?
Yeah, yeah. But the
Did
thing
you
is
hear
that's
about
more
that, Sean?
ridiculous.
No, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to
But
cut
like,
you off, Topaz.
yeah, no problem. But that's a huge like example. It's if they're too chronically online and they're copying it, like it's like when did women become such sheep? Like I just don't understand that. And that's what I have a problem with because it's a bad representation of women in general. Um and they shouldn't listen to the bad apples on the internet, you know? So I think it's a mixture of like Shaun said, having not realistic expectations at times. And then also I think also like whatever's trending, they'll go for it. And also not really knowing what they want. But at the core of it all, we are, but I can speak for myself. And as a woman, I think it's nice to know that, like if you're a feminine woman, it's nice to be with someone that you can count on. Like if you were to lose everything, you're with the guy that is gonna be like, don't worry, we'll figure it out and we'll get you to that point of bringing you back up. You know what I mean? And I think people nowadays confuse provider with and like protector. They don't really know what that means nowadays. They just think that the guy has to be like a multimillionaire, and that's not what it is. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah.
It's interesting too, guys. So women, I think, unfortunately, to some degree, might shoot themselves in the foot because as a woman increases in success and achievement, their pool of eligible men becomes smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
So we know, and I talked to other high performance entrepreneurs, and I spoke with Chespra not so long ago. He has over a large following on social media, a fitness influencer, but he's obviously very successful. But he understands the male problem that's happening right now, and women, I think, on average, are chasing after the top 20 percentile of men. And unfortunately, there are not a lot of these men going around. So what's happening, and you touched on this too, Topes, is hookup culture, where women are in fact sharing men, which is fucking insane.
Yeah.
Um, so I, I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen from here on out. But I mean, how does increasing an achievement of women in education and employment contribute to an imbalance in the dating market? And I'll start with you, Shaun, with this question, mate.
Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, the market's already dysregulated, where, as you say, like a huge portion of women are looking for a select number of men, and yeah, by the sounds of things, it's certainly going to go in one direction. But it comes back to what I said to you before. I think people need to have a bit of self-awareness and really reflect on what it is that they value as an individual. You know, the the trend is like, oh, you need a man who's, earning six figures, who's 6 foot. It's like, all right, you might want a man who's financially stable and who's tall, but it's like, that's very generic. It's like, what about a man who's going to be emotionally stable, who's loyal, who's going to have your back? Like there's certain values, I think, that go outside of those sort of surface level traits, which people are buying into. Like,
Yeah.
I think getting very clear on that would be a good place to start rather than just following the herd. So I need to earn a lot of money. Of course, yeah, but people can lose their jobs. People could get sick. People can get injured. You can lose all of that overnight. And I think it's about, work ethic. Does he have the right mentality? Can he handle stress? Is he going to have your back when shit hits the fan? They're the sort of values I think people should prioritize a little bit more. And it often takes a little bit longer to find out those things, which I think hookup culture is having a negative effect on.
Yeah, that's some fucking great advice, Shaun, mate. Yeah, very good. But yeah, Topaz, how can high achieving women who are doing exceptionally well in their career better navigate their way around this whole dating market? Because a lot of men are invisible. So there's a large portion of men towards the bottom of the dating landscape that are essentially invisible. Like you just walk through a McDonald's, you might see just a handful of men to the right, to the left, etc. Men just in everyday living are just completely invisible. But for the women out there that are high achieving and want to have a stable relationship, what should their mindset be?
Well, that's the thing, right? It's like I feel like a lot of women lose themselves in the whole boss bitch mentality thing. And that's the problem because you can be high achieving and still be very feminine. Like it has nothing to do with the fact it doesn't have to turn you into a like masculine type of woman, right? But I find that that's almost always the case where women they get so caught up in that I have to like compete with men type of mentality rather than just doing it for themselves. And then that's where they get caught up in thinking that no guy is good enough for them. But like at the end of the day, let's say a doctor, that's a high achieving woman, a doctor, she's likely going to marry another doctor. And so I don't see it as an issue really. Like I think as long as they're a good person and aligning their same values, like that's the number one thing I think, like Shaun said. Do you have the same values? Do you have the same morals? Because that's what's going to make a relationship last, right? And I find that the women, the self-acclaimed, like the ones that name themselves high achieving, are generally not really that high achieving. Because, like, you know, you see the doctors and you see the surgeons and you see all of these high achieving women, and they're usually married, and they're usually married within their same field. But the ones that are single, it's like they have normal careers and they think they're so high achieving, and it's like I see that so often, and it's like it's not your career, it's your personality. Um, so I think that women really just need to not lose sight of who they are at their core, and stop listening to social media, stop listening to that whole like feminist independent mentality, because that's what's draining them at the end of the day. Um, and I like we spoke about, I think that women still do want a man that is going to be a little bit above them. Um, but that doesn't necessarily mean, like, if there's two doctors, it doesn't necessarily mean he has to make more money. It could be that she knows that he's going to take care of things at the end of the day. If everything goes south, he's going to be the guy that's going to be able to take care of things and get them back to the top. You know what I mean? So people really need to start looking more like deeper rather than like such superficial values, because that's the problem. Everyone had like nowadays it's very surface level, superficial, and I agree with everything that Shaun said in that sense.
Yeah. There's a growing trend as well, and I'm not too sure if you're familiar with this too, Shaun, mate. But Topaz, you might be aware of this, where women are considering mothers as second-class citizens. Now, how the fuck does that enter someone's mind? Because something that we all are so grateful for, having a mum, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now if it wasn't
Yeah.
for our beautiful mums. And
Mhm.
I think that we really need to start pedestalizing motherhood again, because we know, and Shaun, mate, we spoke about the current birth drop. We now know that we're in a population collapse. Where we're just producing fewer and fewer kids. But there's a growing concern about women telling other women that because you decide to be a mother, that you're a second class citizen.
Yeah.
So I mean, in what ways can we elevate motherhood? And I'll start with you, Shaun.
What ways can we elevate it? Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I haven't been involved in many circles where that's the thing. Although I don't know if the pendulum's kind of swung the other way. I don't know. It's just like another trend on the internet.
Yeah.
I think, the Topaz mentioned the feminist movement, which I think initially was started with good intentions. Like women do want to be independent. They want equal opportunities. Uh, yeah, they want to be able to choose their careers if that's what they want to do, and they want those opportunities. But that shouldn't come at the sacrifice of like being a mother. Like I don't see why you can't have both. And I think, like I said, I think motherhood is the most amazing thing. Like I think, particularly single moms like mine, she's a superhero. I see that as a greater achievement than anything I could ever do. Um, yeah, just like I said, I don't speak to many people who don't appreciate that. Um, I just think it's being mindful about like timing, date with intentions in your 20s. You don't have to be so focused on your career. Um, I think, it's great that you want to be a high achiever, you want to be successful, you want to make a lot of money. Um, but I think just get clear on what sort of man you're trying to call in, because a lot of men don't mind or don't value a super ambitious, high achieving woman in terms of their career and their finances as much as
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah.
I think we just want to know, is that person going to be
Good
supportive? Is she
person.
going to be a good mom? Um, yeah. So I think just, again, being a little bit more intentional with
Yeah.
that one. And
It's very interesting you said that, Shaun. I reflect just on my past relationships, and I've had some amazing relationships, but as men, we're not too fixated on a woman's socioeconomic status. Like me personally, I'd date a girl that works at McDonald's. I don't care as long as she's a nice person, as long as she has good values, morals, she's kind. These are all important traits and values that I look for in a partner. To me, your achievements are fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but that doesn't define who you are as a person. And would you feel that women have sort of lost touch of their femininity, Topaz, and what they sort of, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I see it. I honestly barely meet any women that can cook nowadays. And I know people are going to be like, oh, guys should cook too, but that's not, it's just something that I find it's just very astonishing to me that like women now, even on their dating apps, they expect the guy to cook. They expect the guy to be the breadwinner. So it's like, what are you bringing to the table then? You can't expect, like, they want the man to take on the masculine and feminine role, and it's just insane. Yeah, I think women have lost a lot, their femininity a lot. And I think that they're waiting. What I hear from a lot of women is that they're waiting until they get married to learn these things, to learn how to cook, to learn how to clean, but that's not how it works. You have to be a wife before you get married, right? Like you have to be a wife in order for a guy to want to make you a wife. You can't just expect, well, I'll learn all this and when I have kids, I'll just deal with it then. But if you're not preparing yourself for that, if you're not preparing your nurturing side, you're going to struggle immensely while you're in that marriage and while you have those kids because you're not used to any of that. And so I find that women are struggling in that sense because they don't realize like it's not, you can't, if you don't like doing something before you learn it, you're not going to like it after, especially when it's forced on you, right? So if you think you want to be a mother and you want to be taking care of children, then you should work on your nurturing side way before in advance of you having kids because it's not going to come naturally to you at that point. And I think a lot of
Yeah,
women are losing that. They're losing their feminine side. Yeah. Yeah, it's not good because, also I find that like in marriages now, what I see, it's a lot of like, tit for tat. It's keeping score. It's not working together as one. And it's very much so in just what I notice in Western culture, not in foreign
yeah,
couples, because the way that it works, like my parents, we're from Honduras. And so like the way I grew up was seeing people work together and not keeping score, just working as one to raise a family, right? So that's not really what I'm seeing in today's society in marriages and relationships. And I think that's where people are going wrong too.
yeah. The documentary Birth Gap, and I spoke with you about this, Topaz, and Shaun, I think I spoke with you about it, and I haven't cried since my dad died, right? My dad passed away in 2020, and I watched this documentary and I fucking bawled my eyes out. So 80% of women, before their fertility window had closed, did not intend to not have children. In other words, involuntary childlessness. And these women had support groups around the world, and the interviewer and the person that did the documentary went to these support groups, and these women come together to grieve for the families that they never had. And I I was just so upset to hear that women wanted to have a family and were chasing their career and fixated on their employment, and then they missed their boat. And my heart just broke for those women. But Shaun, I think what's really interesting as well, mate, is there's a lot of women out there that worry that when the man is in the process of building himself, and whether he's a high performance entrepreneur, he's on a trajectory where he's probably going to become successful. a lot of women do worry that once the man gets to that level of success, that he'll just leave them and go start sleeping with other women and things like that. And I reflect on Alex Hormozy and Leah Hormozy. And Leah Hormozy and Alex Hormozy are both high-performance entrepreneurs. But I think if I remember correctly, Leah said, I would sleep with you under a bridge because he was in a position where he was just about ready to lose everything, but then she helped him back on his journey. What do you think that is, mate? Like, because me personally, if I had a woman that was with me from the ground up, no fucking way would I let her go. I'm going to spoil the shit out of her. But what do you think is going on with women to say that they have this apprehension and fear that their man's just going to leave them once he becomes successful?
Yeah, I mean, I love that story. I often think about that a lot. And I mean, like yourself, I would love nothing more than to meet someone when I'm building and who's stuck by me, that when I am where I want to be in life, like I'm going to have so much more gratitude for that person because they're
100%.
part of the journey, they really are. Um, and I think a lot of men would say the same thing. I don't know. I guess for both men and women, like we probably inherently have a fear of commitment, a fear of being abandoned. But yeah, I can assure you, at least from my perspective and the men that I spoke to, that we never need. I speak to a lot of guys who say, oh, I'm not where I want to be in life yet to meet the sort of woman that I want to be with, and they feel like they have to have this certain level of success before they can call in the right woman, which I think's pretty productive mindset. If you really are working on yourself and you want to build, great. But that doesn't mean that you can't be available to meet someone who's willing to build with you. Because I think that would be way more valuable. Because I know a lot of men who are very successful and they have fears of women being gold diggers and only committing to him for his wealth and his success. So it's like it works both ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you spoken to women about this topic, Topez? Because this is the worry that men have. They worry that, and even high performance entrepreneurs, they worry that women are going to be gold diggers and just, only like them and appreciate them for their money. But also very few women, I think, really have that idea. But I think a lot of women do. They worry that if they help build a man, they that they're going to just leave them. And I think if I remember correctly, was it Bob the Builder, if you were talking about last time? Can you go over that?
Yeah,
What was that about?
yeah. I think I got it wrong. I think they called him Barbara the Builder.
Barbara the Builder.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I think what it is, it's fear coming from outside parties, people that basically are giving bad advice. There's a woman called Shira Seven. She's a gold digger. She basically teaches women how to be gold diggers, how to find a rich provider, all that stuff, right? And she always tells women, don't be Barbara the Builder, don't be that fool that's there with him in the hard times. He's just gonna cheat on you and leave you and blah blah. So like, there's women like that that have a lot of influence on younger women, and they listen because they don't know better. Um, but the problem is that the women that do, for example, like, experience being Barbara the Builder and getting tops to the side, it's because they go after the wrong men and they don't realize that. They're going after men that don't want to be changed. Like, they don't want to be helped. They don't want to build with you. And so then they get that confused and they think that it's all men that wouldn't appreciate it. But no, it's because they're not going after a good man that is actually going to be appreciative of that. And a lot of men would appreciate that, but they're going after the ones that they think that they can fix, rather than a man that's working on his stuff and wants to build with her. She's just pursuing a guy that she's trying to fix, and it's not the same thing, but they rationalize it as the same thing, and so that's why they think that men are just going to leave if you try to help them out and be with them during the struggle period.
Yeah. Because we know that the price of progress is pain. Growth, you could use that analogy. Diamonds are built under pressure. We know
Mhm.
that, anything worthwhile is hard, that's valuable is hard to obtain. And, as I said, Sean and Topaz, if I had a woman that was with me from the ground up and helped me build a multi-million-dollar business, I'm not fucking letting her go.
Mhm.
But did you hear about Dan Bilzerian? He's chosen to be monogamous. Did you hear about that? Sean, did you hear about that, mate?
I did, yeah. He's kind of
Yeah.
changed his a little bit.
Yeah. Did you hear about that, Topaz?
I didn't hear about that, but I'm not a fan.
No, but you're right. You made a good point that women are chasing after the wrong men, and there are
Yeah.
good men. There are men around, that essentially, not the type of man that they're looking at. That would be a person of value and
To build
honor and
with.
respect,
Yeah.
loyalty, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we spoke about the Me Too movement, Sean, and we know that 80% of men are hesitant to approach a woman for being seen as creepy. They're so scared, but yet women still want the men to approach. And the Me Too movement was important because it helped to sanitize predatory behavior. But what it's done is it's completely sanitized it. You have a huge amount of women that still want men to approach. And then you also have a lot of men who are scared shitless to approach women. But
Mhm.
what is the way that a man can correctly approach a woman without being seen as creepy?
Using a bit of social awareness. Yeah, the whole sort of Me Too movement and like where women come forward to talk about how they've been mistreated by men, it often doesn't really help because, 95% of men are respectful. And if people are
Mhm.
coming publicly and saying, oh, men are being inappropriate, men are being disrespectful, those 95%, the 95% of men who are actually just being good men anyway are going to be sort of diluted and they're going to sort of move even further away of wanting to do anything that is inappropriate. Whereas the 5% of men or whatever who are actually the ones who are being disrespectful and are harassing women, they're not going to give a shit anyway. So it's almost creating a bigger divide. So I feel like that's worth saying. But yeah, like in terms of approaching, you got to put yourself out there. But I think just having a little bit of a social awareness. I was talking to a friend about this yesterday. Just see if you think a woman's receptive. Is she smiling at you? Is she making eye contact? Are you in the middle of a dark alley? Are you in a public place? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, is she just hanging out with her friends? Does she look like she wants to have a conversation with you? Does she have her headphones on in the gym, like in the middle of a set? Just don't be an idiot and just go in, smile, you know, drop a compliment in there. If the compliment is well received, then you've even got an in or an out. Like the worst case scenario is that, oh, thank you, I have a boyfriend or I'm not available. Be on your way. She's going to feel better about herself. You're going to feel better about yourself for actually having the courage to make a move. Uh, but if you just go in with no sort of, I don't know, no sort of direction and no sort of awareness, that's when you can come across as a little bit inappropriate and you might get a bit of a negative response. So,
Yeah.
it's basically,
Sean, mate, this came from Dr. David Buss. It's, um, it's, it's one man doing 1,000 bad things, not 1,000 men doing one bad thing. And you nailed it the other time I spoke to you. You said it's the minority of men that's ruining it for the majority, which is why I think we're having this dilemma right now. But the Topaz, you talk to women, do women still want men to approach?
Yeah. I think, yes, the thing is the women do want it, but it's very, it's hard because I think, like I said, I think a woman don't really know. They're not clear with what they want. And if they're being honest, they want men to approach, but they only want the specific type of men that they want to approach, right? Like if they find the guy good looking and they're interested, they're gonna be like, oh, they're gonna be excited. But if they don't find the guy attractive, they're gonna call it creepy. And it's not creepy. It's the same thing. It could be the same as the approach, but that's the problem, right? And so if I was a guy, I personally would also, have a little bit of a struggle with that because are they going to find me creepy or are they going to find it charming?
Yeah.
It just really depends. So I personally don't really think that like I should continue to do the cold approach, just going up to you and talking to you. I don't think that works anymore. I think it's just having a conversation. If you are, like Shaun said, if just play it by ear. If you're in a situation where she's giving you a little bit of a cue, then smile at her
Yeah.
back, talk to her. And then if it doesn't go anywhere further, then that's fine. You tried. And that also gives you a little bit more practice too. Joining social events is great. Joining athletic teams, joining the gym, joining anything that you're able to put yourself in more social aspects, because that can lead you to meeting someone potentially. And if not, you can meet friends who can introduce you to people. And it's, the more social, the better, right? So,
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine. She asked me a question. I hope a guy, that I see at the gym asks me out. And I said to her, guys are simple. You have to dumb it down, however. So 3 glances at the gym for like 2 seconds isn't going to fucking cut it. Maybe just give a longer stare than usual, because I use it as like a golden retriever vibe. Treat it like a golden retriever. So give off not subtle cues that are kind of very obscure and minuscule, because guys really struggle with that. They really struggle with understanding the cues that women get. I'm like, oh shit, should I go in? She asked me the approach, should I not? Oh shit, she's with her friend now. Oh, she's going to the water cooler at the gym. Would this be a good time to talk to her? Shit, I don't
yeah,
know. It's like they're hesitant. They're like, should I go in? Should I not? Um,
yeah.
but Shaun, like, to approach a woman that you find attractive and maybe she's giving some sort of cues, how do you help guys with their confidence just to man up and maybe just shoot their shot?
Great question. Yeah, that's like a huge obstacle for guys. It's like, I don't know where to meet women, or I just don't even know what to say or how to approach it. So it's something that I'm going to talk about a lot. I think you should just have your intentions set to being curious and creating like a fun, positive experience rather than being super outcome focused, where a lot of guys are like, I need to get a number, I need to get her out on a date right now, or I need to get her into bed tonight kind of thing. If you're going in with like a really intense approach, that can kind of put women on the defensive. Whereas if you're just going into, you know, just to get to know her, like focus on that connection, because the only thing you've really got to go off for a guy most of the time is you've just seen what she looks like. So talk to her for 5 minutes. There might be a connection there. Just like I said, start with a compliment, go in easy, be respectful, and if there's no vibe there, just go your separate ways. But it's just having a little bit of social awareness and having a little bit of courage as well. I agree with everything Topaz has said there, but it's definitely easier if you're being connected through friends or through social events, because there's some context or some similar values there. But I do encourage guys to go and say hello, even if you are feeling a little bit uncomfortable, because most guys, most guys struggle. Most of the guys I talk to, they're very guys, they've got good values, they're very respectful, but they just never really make that move. And I think women would appreciate those sort of guys uh, making a move a little bit more frequently.
Yeah. And we know dating apps aren't cutting it. Dating apps are really shit at the moment. I read a survey indicating that most dating apps, have not been effectively met the needs of users seeking meaningful relationships. And I think the ratio on dating apps, I think, it's higher usage as men compared to women. So there are more men using dating apps compared to women, but yet obviously women have a lot of men that they match with. A lot of success on dating apps, but men are having an absolute terrible time. And did you guys hear about Bumble? They introduced Did you
Yeah.
hear about that, Topaz?
Yeah. I
It
think
was so the women could message first, but with a question or something. And this goes back to women wanting the man to make the first move, but women weren't liking that.
it's so funny because that app was originally created for women to make the first move. And because it wasn't happening, I think they were going bankrupt, right? They were like on the verge of bankruptcy or something.
Yeah,
And
their stocks just went in the toilet.
yeah, so they had to switch the app. And I think now men can make the first move on the app that was created for women to make the first move. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I saw that. Did you see that also?
Sean, did you hear about that, mate?
Yes, yeah, I heard that they were introducing the option for men to initiate the first message, which doesn't surprise me. Women don't want the labor of making the first move. But I mean, traditionally speaking, it's a more masculine role to initiate, to lead, and yeah, it's part of the courting process. And I think dating apps are just a good tool, but that's all they are. They're a tool to meet people, and I think it should always be your secondary way of meeting people. You should meet people in person, through friends, through social events. Dating apps are just distorting or dysregulating an already dysregulated market where
Yeah,
you don't have any idea about someone's personality, what they value. You really just have very surface level things to go off.
yes.
With and most people's dating profiles suck as well.
That's true. And, mate, you work with a lot of men and, I'm sure you've helped them with their dating profile and things like that. But you made a good point, mate. Using them as a secondary option, it's better to obviously meet, as you said, Tope, as friends through friends or sporting events and things like that. Um, Guys, it's been fantastic talking to both of you. And, you both, um, as I said, have been two of my most requested guests. People really appreciate and like what you both are doing. And what's really amazing about this conversation is Shaun's jumped in and Topaz, you've gotten a chance to hear from what Shaun has to say. And Shaun, you're sort of hearing it from Topaz, the woman's perspective as well, because I think it's really good that there are people that understand the dilemmas that are happening for both sexes right now. We look at it from an outside perspective and we look at it like that fucking sucks for both parties. Men are having it difficult in other ways. Women are having it difficult in other ways too. But I think the more that we can talk about this, the more that, we can really kind of change the dynamics. And it all comes down to the family nucleus. That's what it all comes down to. The goal for anybody that's listening to this is if they do want to have a family, is just to acknowledge this, listen to this, understand the challenges that women are facing, but then also understand the challenges that men are facing. But Shaun, mate, you're all over socials. You're on TikTok. You're on Instagram. And what about your coaching, mate? Where can people find you with that?
Yeah, either Instagram or TikTok. Shaun Reid Coaching. I've got a little podcast as well called Dating in the Wild.
I've heard of that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
so,
have you heard of Shaun's Topaz's podcast?
I haven't, but I will look into it.
Yeah. And Topaz, you post some amazing content.
Thank
That this
you.
is how I discovered you, and it's just so refreshing to see from a woman's perspective that understands the problems that men are having in this whole dating crisis that's happening right now. But where can people find you, Topaz?
So YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, Real Talks Topaz is all across.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. It's been an absolute honor to sit down with both of you. And yeah, I'm super excited for people to hear this conversation.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.